Hey, Friendo, Steve here.
And Larson.
And welcome back to Going in Raw Countout. On today's episode with news dropping with Triple H announcing that there's going to be a draft coming up in the next couple weeks at some point soon. We thought we would take a look at the current state of the roster and determine, maybe give Triple H a helping hand in terms of shuffling the roster around. So today we're going to list off 10 superstars from the WWE that should change brands.
Correct.
So, yeah, let's go ahead and dive right into it.
Yeah, we can jump right into it. Why not? Yeah, let's do it.
All right, number 10.
10
is The Miz. Yes, The Miz. I didn't have my notes up, but I put that one in there. So here's one of my, I mentioned this on one of our episodes, the other thing on Wednesday's questions episode.
Yeah, at some point.
Raw is a 3-hour slog, right? At best, it can move along at a decent pace and be fairly entertaining. At worst, it takes 3 hours and makes it feel like 5 hours.
Yes.
Part of that is just sort of the content involved. And when you have Miz TV on a Raw, sometimes I feel like they just use that to fill time as opposed to advance anything. The Miz has had some time well spent on the SmackDown brand. Like he's been for when he was doing the Intercontinental stuff, like 2016 or so.
Yeah, that feud against Dolph, wasn't that on SmackDown?
That was good stuff. That was on SmackDown. Yeah. So as a competitor, if the Miz gets like a shift over to brands, maybe it'll give him a little dose of relevancy, perhaps. Or at the very least, they won't just be like, oh, we've got 3 hours to fill. Let's throw a Miz TV on there and have that go on endlessly. No, SmackDown, it's a tighter 2 hours. So maybe they would have to use him in a much more efficient manner, which is, I kind of feel, how they should be using the Miz in a much more efficient manner.
Agreed. You know, I can think of few things as wrestling fans that sucks out my life force more than watching an episode of turning on an episode of Raw and have it opened with an episode edition of Miz TV.
Right, exactly.
That just sets the table for a long slog of a 3-hour Raw.
Yeah,
you're right. Send the Miz to SmackDown where every second is valuable. It's a shorter show. Get him in segments for maximum impact. And it might be a bit of a creative rebirth for the Miz, if you will, because you're not putting him out there to do 10-minute talkie bits on Miz TV.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know. Just his general presentation fits SmackDown. SmackDown, because of the blues, it's much more polished. It feels much more polished, you know.
You know what we need to do finally?
What?
Remember, it was on an episode of SmackDown that Miz was in the ring. And Shinsuke Nakamura debuted on the main roster.
Oh, yeah.
A feud that we, I think, never got.
Yeah, we never really actually got that one.
Finally get that.
Yeah, that's possible because, of course, Shinsuke is on SmackDown. He's going to be returning yesterday.
This Friday. Yeah, yesterday.
Right. He returned yesterday. So anyways, yeah, I think The Miz, that's a good one to move brands. Next up, number 9.
9.
Karrion Kross. He needs to fall and pray over to Raw.
To Monday Night Raw. So, you know, he was one of the several re-signings that Triple H did when he assumed control of creative. And I think of those, you know, I thought I had the highest hopes for him in terms of what he was going to be doing. I mean, he debuted in a segment with Roman Reigns in it.
Yeah.
You know, and he had a feud with Drew McIntyre.
True. That
was kind of a split. They each won a match, memory serves. And he hasn't been doing much since. I mean, say what you will about his in-ring ability. You can't argue about his presentation. He's got the presentation of a main eventer.
He does.
And if they're not doing much with him on SmackDown, set him to Raw. There's more time. There's 3 hours.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Give him more opportunity to explore his character. Give him more opportunities to put on matches. Start building him up because he's a really good opponent for your other upper mid-card or main eventers on Raw.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to talk about Bobby Lashley here a bit later on, but imagine a feud between Karrion Kross and Bobby Lashley on Raw.
Or even Bronson Reed. You know, I think that's the kind of thing that can elevate both guys. I agree. Absolutely. Yeah. Omos. How about this? You take Miz off Raw, and then you put Karrion Kross there. He gets a talk show.
That's good.
Crosstalk.
Crossfire. Wasn't that a
Crossfire? Yeah, I knew
Crossfire. Yeah.
Crossfire.
Get his own talk show. But it's not just a talk show. It's that format where it's him, and then I don't know who's a good foil for Karrion Kross on this talk show.
The Austin Theory. I don't know. That's not
that
very
one.
good at all. He can't talk at all. Kevin Owens just no-sells everything he does.
All right, that's good. Kevin Owens and Karrion Kross on Crosstalk.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. Yeah, that'll work.
And then in Cross, the K and the O were both capitalized because of Kevin Owens.
Yeah, right. And
wow, we just invented a great new segment.
I know, that could be amazing. And then they bring in like special guest Frank Ledger to come in, and he's also the sponsor.
Yes, or Jesse Ventura. Just Karrion Kross doing his Jesse Ventura voice.
He's like, hey, how do you like this voice that I'm doing right now? But no, getting back to the serious business of professional wrestling, Karrion Kross on Raw. I like that one. He's got a Raw feel anyways. Like his whole entrance, once it goes from being black and white, it's all like red and menacing. He's got a very Raw feel anyways.
He does.
That's where he debuted it from main roster with the bucket on his head. So
but he didn't have the whole presentation though.
No, he didn't. God, they chumped him out so bad.
Oh, they really did. They really did. So, I understand. Apparently, a lot of the people that Triple H brought back were brought back for depth. Mm-hmm. It's still pretty surprising, given how the packaging of Karrion Kross. They haven't done more with him, and someone I have here in the honorable mentions. I guess we can talk about him now. Johnny Gargano, given the amazing success he had in NXT, it's kind of surprising that Triple H hasn't done more with him on the main roster. Yeah,
I agree. The Kross thing is interesting because Kross to me, like, I'm not trying to throw shade or anything, but like I can think of a couple names like Hit Row, Bronson Reed, like Tegan Knox, Michin maybe. I understand some of the people that are kind of obviously there for depth, and it's not meant for shade or anything. Any of those people I think can break out into a bigger role if they find something. But Kross doesn't strike me as a guy that you would bring in for depth. You don't have that kind of presentation, and his gravitas, his promos are really good. Everything they do with him that are like little mini short films are really good. It is surprising to me, and I wonder if maybe to a degree with Kross, there's too much there for them to concentrate on because there's a lot going on. It's like, is he supernatural? Is he a mob guy? Is he a hitman? What's the deal with Scarlett? I wonder if like backstage there's like too much going on there for them to be like, okay, this makes sense for him to do. I don't know. I think there's a lot you can do with them, but it's almost as if like when he did the Andre the Giant Battle Royal, he just saunters on down with everybody else. I'm like, this guy, it's like, I don't know. He could have the same Bray Wyatt mystique, Like I feel like he could have that too. Yeah. But they just sort of wheel him out there like a normal guy these days.
Yeah, I know. Part of me thinks he still hasn't really fully recovered from that Adam Cole promo in NXT.
That was a devastating one.
It really was. Now, if they would allow him to wrestle the style that we've seen him wrestle, not in WWE elsewhere, maybe he can kind of get back to where maybe he should be in terms of higher on the card. But man, that promo, wow! Like once a month you come across that. Someone puts that up, and that's just devastating. It's just you can see the look on his face when Adam Cole says, "You know what they do to Adam Cole in the ring to make him feel special? That's special. Ring of the bell." And just his Karrion Kross body language, it's such a tell. I know
it is.
It just wrecked.
You ever see a guy drowning out of water? That's what it is. That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
So he grew his hair back. He's a new guy. The funny thing is, all you really need for him is like you take some of those people you brought back for depth, and then you haven't beat them. Yeah. Haven't beat Bronson Reed. Haven't beat. I hate to say this, but haven't beat Johnny Gargano. Maybe Gargano can sneak a win in against Kross, but then Kross just annihilates the guy,
Yeah, gets his heat back, yeah.
Yeah, put him in there with people he can beat. Yeah. Moving on, number 8. Piper Niven. So she's currently on the Raw brand. This was one of your picks. What do you see that with Piper Niven that would benefit her being on SmackDown?
When I look at the SmackDown women's division, you have Raquel and Liv. They're the tag champions now. And down the line, Raquel would seem an obvious feud for Rhea Ripley, who's the SmackDown Women's Champion after WrestleMania, given their history. They had a great last woman standing match at NXT, but they're not going to do that feud probably while Raquel and Liv are tag champs. Other than Raquel and Liv and Charlotte, who Rhea just defeated for the title, I don't know really who else there is on the SmackDown brand to really step up and be a contender for Rhea's championship. And that's why I thought Piper Niven. Bring her over from Raw. She's a fantastic wrestler. You put her in a program with Rhea Ripley, over the spring or summer, and you have them put on a series of really good matches that'll help elevate Piper, who is seemingly, on Raw irregularly. She's not on a lot.
Yeah.
And I know, we just mentioned in the Miz entry here that time is precious on SmackDown, but I feel like if you bring her over on SmackDown with the idea, with the purpose of getting her into a feud with Rhea as soon as you can, take some time building her up on SmackDown, get into that feud, and really come up with something that can elevate everybody involved, I think that'd be great.
Yeah. No, I think it's a really good idea. I've seen her be KOD'd by Bianca like a ton of times. And so I think that's probably a good sign that it's time for her to go elsewhere. And like you're saying, the depth on the SmackDown women's roster, Rhea opponents for Rhea, is there's really not a whole lot of them. So yeah, I think Piper Niven going over SmackDown makes a ton of sense. You can, draft her and then before she debuts, run some vignettes to sort of reacquaint the audience with Piper Niven and how devastating she can be. Have her come in, big win streak, and then, eats a loss to Rhea Ripley where they do some like impressive feats of strength,
Yeah. I think that could do wonders for Piper. And then, then the question is, if she has that momentum coming out of that feud, even though she doesn't win the title, what's next? Can they capitalize on it?
They need a mid-card title for the women.
Yeah.
Because that would have Piper Niven written all over it, All right, let's move on to the next one. Number 7. Austin Theory. So I know he's a current U.S. champion. So, I didn't really plan for you send that guy over, you send Gunther over to Raw. Sure, maybe, who knows? But regardless, it sort of falls under the category that I had the Miz. Guys who show up on Raw, they have him this guy shouldn't be in there talking for 10 minutes. And they need to find a character for him. And I feel like maybe a change of scenery would help that. And beyond, what'll help that is if creative sits down and actually comes up with something for him. But whenever I see Austin Theory on Raw, I think, all right, here's more stuff that's not terribly compelling that I know is not going to go anywhere. Why don't you put him on a show again that he'll benefit from the efficiency of time? Use Austin Theory in smaller doses, but in smarter doses.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe that would be the case. The creative team would be forced to do that on SmackDown.
Maybe. One advantage to moving Theory to SmackDown, and I guess as well as moving Gunther to Raw, would be fresh matchups.
Yeah, sure.
How many times have we seen Austin Theory in a program with Seth Rollins and Bobby Lashley?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You send Theory over to SmackDown, you got feud with Sheamus, Drew McIntyre, Nakamura. I could go on, Karrion Kross if he were to stay there.
Yeah.
There's a series of feuds that, given the right story, could help him develop a more well-defined, unique character rather than just, I'm a badass dude who likes to fight, but I'm not very good at winning.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And on looking at it from the Raw perspective, you bring Gunther over there,
right? Yeah,
tons of fresh matchups for him.
And there's I did a breakdown. I don't know when I'm going to put out the video, but I did a breakdown of Triple H booked Raw versus Vince McMahon booked Raw, and in that last hour of this past week's Raw, there were like 3 matches that each went. It was like 80 minutes. I'm sorry. It was 40 minutes of wrestling in just the third hour.
Wow.
40 solid. The week before Vince McMahon, the entire 3 hours is 40 minutes of wrestling.
Yeah.
So just in that last hour, if you're going to get Gunther, a guy who you want to see him in 15-minute matches minimum, right? Yeah. You put him on the show that lasts 3 hours because there's hella room for that. These days, like Gunther, it's like there's not enough time to really make the most of what Gunther can do. This entry is now just basically more of a reason to bring Gunther over to Raw than Theory over to SmackDown.
Well,
but
I think if you put Theory on SmackDown,
thing.
You'd have to bring Gunther to Raw.
Right, because of both the mid cards, yeah. But yeah, you bring Imperium and Gunther, so you got a tag team and Gunther over there on Raw. There's a lot more time to do more stuff with those guys. And I don't know, again, with Theory, kind of a polished guy. I just see him on SmackDown. That United States Championship, it looks really fancy. I could see that on SmackDown.
Yeah.
It has a history on SmackDown as well. It was there for quite a while for a spell there.
Another advantage to potentially bringing Gunther over to Raw, assuming that Cody Rhodes stays on the red brand, is you can revisit that. Their little mini match at the end of the Royal Rumble was really good. If you're telling the story of Cody over the summer leading to Mania 40 potentially, if he's got to run into every obstacle, every bit of adversity he can.
Yeah.
Well, he manages, whether, depending if they do the thing with Brock, where Brock, if he wins at Backlash, Cody wins the rematch at King and Queen of the Ring, or they wait and revisit that feud later, you could maybe do something comparable with Gunther, where, Cody has to, he gets past Brock either in a victory or defeat. Okay, what's next? Gunther. And Gunther beats him.
Yeah.
This booking Cody to lose all through the first half
I
of this
don't
year.
really get, that's just not,
It's adversity, Steve.
Well, that's one way of putting it.
And after Gunther, beats Honky Tonk Man's a record for Intercontinental title reign, maybe he drops the belt at some point. And if you want them to cross paths again, Cody and Gunther, you could do it then.
Yeah. Another thing that you put Gunther over on Raw, what it accomplishes is keeping him away from Roman Reigns. Because at some point, with as much winning as Gunther does,
I know
people are going to be like, why isn't he fighting this guy? And if Roman's going to have both those titles, we haven't really talked about, are they going to split the titles again, or what are they going to do there? But if everything remains the status quo beyond the draft and shuffling some superstars around, Gunther getting away from Roman, on who, SmackDown is basically Roman's brand. I know he's champion on both brands, but
yeah, he's not on Raw very often.
He's not on Raw very often. That also accomplishes that and sort of saves maybe a Gunther Roman matchup for way down the line.
Yeah,
when Roman's on super part-time schedule.
Yeah.
Anyways, moving on to number 6. Bobby Lashley heads to SmackDown.
So now that Roman is still champ, undisputed Universal Champion, he's pretty much run through everybody on SmackDown, with the exception, I guess, of Nakamura. And we'll see if they revisit that little bit of story that happened some point last year. It was after Boogs got hurt. It was after last year's WrestleMania.
Somebody mentioned, and I noticed this too, scrolling through my Instagram, that WWE posted a video of what was it? Nakamura eliminating Reigns from the Rumble or something like that. And then right there in text in the headline, Nakamura beats Reigns.
Yeah.
And so I don't think for a second that Digital knows what creative's going to do in visiting that. But given that he's debuting on SmackDown yesterday, it's entirely reasonable that they're going to try to do something with Shinsuke and Roman. That wouldn't shock me at all.
No, it wouldn't shock me either. Given, especially when they brought Riddle back, at least with Triple H booking the show, it was right back into the Bloodline feud.
Yeah, right.
Wouldn't surprise me they do the same with Nakamura. If Nakamura still took issue with the Usos for hurting Boogs, even though it was just a freak thing during the match.
Yeah.
If they were to revisit that particular story, getting back around to Bobby Lashley. It's a bummer they didn't reform the Hurt Business, because if they had given us Hurt Business versus Bloodline over the summer, that would have been incredible.
That would have been really cool, yeah.
That would have been really awesome. Because I don't believe we've had a match between Bloodline Roman Reigns and Bobby Lashley. And there's a possibility there for some really good stuff. Especially if his Hurt Business with Bobby Lashley, but even without the Hurt Business, I think there's potential there for Lashley to do some really interesting things. Right now Lashley seems to be in a bit of a feud with Bronson Reed, which the match on Raw was fun enough, and I'm sure they're going to have several more matches or encounters where they're going to show off some really impressive feats of strength. But I kind of just feel like that's what that story is.
Yeah.
And as over and as well utilized as Lashley was last year, seemingly this year, they just don't really know how to best utilize him. They were going to have a feud with Bray Wyatt, which is a weird fit, and it never happened. And then Bobby Lashley should be in the main event on a regular basis.
For all the bluster about, oh, we booked this stuff out months in advance under Triple H, I was kind of surprised at the idea that they really didn't know what they were going to do with Bobby, even heading into Bray calling both Bobby and Brock out, whichever one of you gets out of this, run, I've got next, or whatever he said. And then Brock was like, yeah, I don't want to work with Bray. So he stuck with Bobby, which, like you said, that's just a weird feud. And then they didn't even utilize him on night 2 when there was an opportunity to do that. Yeah, the whole situation was weird. He needs something to get him back on track. I mean, the Reed stuff I think is going to be fun. It's already been pretty fun. Like you said, it's going to be pretty one-dimensional, but there's a place for that. But long-term speaking, he's going to need something new.
Yeah.
All right.
If the story is he's, going after the bloodline by himself. And I know we've seen this countless times, but I don't think we haven't seen someone of Bobby Lashley's stature say, I'm going to take down, I'm willing to challenge the entire bloodline to get my hands on Roman and get a chance at those titles.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And I think that after WrestleMania, after Roman retaining and beating Cody, you run the risk of the bloodline formula getting a bit stale, especially if each match is going to finish the same way. So having someone like Lashley get involved with the bloodline could kind of freshen things up from a creative perspective and keep things interesting if they come about that storyline with a different approach.
He needs a Bloodline Hunter shirt.
Yeah.
Because they haven't done that for a little while for hunting, for faction hunters. Did Kazarian actually have an Elite Hunter shirt? I think he did.
I think he had an
Elite Hunter shirt.
I mean, of course, Yoshitatsu, of course, did have a Bullet Club Hunter shirt.
Bullet Club
I
Hunter.
used to have it. I might still have it somewhere.
I think Jinder Mahal had Rawgate Mutant Hunter.
Well, that was
right.
That was WeBook Raw.
It's still canon. Let's move on. Number 5.
5.
Yes, boy. Pretty Deadly.
This seems the most obvious NXT call-up for the draft. They've done seemingly all they can in NXT.
Yeah, right.
They were the hosts for Stand and Deliver.
Yeah.
They lost to Gallus in the rematch, I believe.
They
beat Tony D and Stax.
They did, yeah.
So
but
maybe
Tony
they're not
D
going
and Stax is sort of their thing, is losing.
I know. So maybe they won't be called up, but this seems to make the most sense. I have here in the honorable mention some other NXT calls potentially that would make a lot of sense, like the Creed brothers.
Yeah.
Katana Chance and Caden Carter. They just lost the women's tag title, so who knows what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And then Zoe Stark.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But yeah, Pretty Deadly with their characters seem just ready made for main roster.
They really do. They're very polished. They're ready to go. Put them on SmackDown and they'll do great. And it'll add some beef to the tag team division, which I hope they split those titles too, because you can't just have one tag team when you've got like 2 brands. That doesn't make any sense.
Oh, imagine a program between them and Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. That'd be
great. Kevin Owens would be beside. He's like, what is your guys' deal?
I know.
Why do you act like that? What is all this stuff here?
Who are you, Scott Hall? You're not Scott Hall.
Yeah. Gallus is another one. I know they're currently the tag team champions. They basically just got there. But Gallus are sort of like main roster ready.
Yeah.
You can just be like, okay, Joe, you're going to be single Gallus here in NXT because you just got there. The other guys, now that you're here, we're going to move on.
Mark and Wolfgang, they can move on to the main roster. Yeah.
Yeah, we're out of here, Joe. Sorry, you're on your own.
Yeah.
But yeah, Pretty Deadly, send them to SmackDown. Them with Maxim male models. Be great. Mix it up with the other models. Yeah.
That'd be something else, yeah.
Number 4.
4.
They don't want none. AJ Styles and the OC.
Kind of what I said about Lashley would also apply to AJ. You have AJ, you have the OC, you have a faction going to SmackDown to feud with the Bloodline. It's been a while since we've seen AJ feud with Roman Reigns over the title. That was shortly after AJ came to WWE. He had that feud with Roman Reigns. It was really good. It was like, one of the AJ's best early feuds, and got some really good matches out of Roman Reigns. So to revisit that now, several years later, you got the Good Brothers with AJ's back going up against the Bloodline. That could be fun.
Dude, AJ Styles and the Good Brothers against Imperium.
That'd be good too.
Imagine AJ versus Gunther. Holy shit. That would be a match and a half right there. Yeah, I like that. That's good stuff. Of course, AJ Styles, SmackDown is the house that he built, according to him. make all the sense in the world for him to go back. He's going to get a big response when he comes back.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he was Mr. Durable for so long. It was very rare that he was out for very long. Now that it's been a while, I'm really looking forward to seeing him come back because the crowd, I think, is really missing him. And now, especially under Triple H, seeing him with like a returning Shinsuke, let's say they revisit that feud because it was sort of not great when they first did it for the WWE title. But there's a lot of things you could do with AJ, especially if he's mixing up for like the Intercontinental Championship on SmackDown. Mm-hmm. That could be some really cool stuff right there.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have him revisit the feud with Nakamura and not have the feud center around shots to the front area.
Yeah, that's all that was.
That was the whole point of it. That was the whole thing about that feud. That's all it did.
You need more.
Like just wear a cup and then that's it. You don't have to worry about it anymore.
Problem solved.
Yeah.
Maybe like even like a cup with like some spikes on it. You know.
Well, you might be able to tell that's there.
Just wear some low hanging pants.
Well, even then, depending on the length of the spikes, it might be be pretty obvious there's something going on there.
No way. Let's move on. Number 3. Charlotte Flair. So I think she's taking a little bit of time off, which makes sense. But when she returns, do you want to see her return to the red brand?
Yeah. It seems inevitable at this point that we're going to get Bianca versus Charlotte. And if Charlotte gets drafted to Raw, again, it's Rhea beat her. I don't think we need to revisit that feud for a little bit. You know, the match was fantastic from a storyline perspective. You know, going into the largest show of the year, WrestleMania, Creative managed to not really put much together for them.
No.
Which is kind of disappointing, even though the match delivered. So yeah, have Charlotte come over to Raw. Have her feud with Bianca. Maybe she can feud with Bayley over there, or Io. You know, there's a lot of good matchup possibilities for her over on Raw as well. So I think it would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you flip? Because I know we're going to talk about something tangential to this. Would you flip Becky over to SmackDown as well? We haven't really talked about her on this list. We're about to reference her husband here in a moment. Yeah. Which, if one goes, the other would go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could see the same thing for Becky perhaps as well. You know, a fresh set of matchups. Mm-hmm. Last we saw, her and Charlotte didn't exactly get along when they did that title switch thing, which was really silly. But yeah, instead of having like all 3 horsewomen on the same brand, maybe you'd flip Becky if you brought Charlotte over to Raw as well.
Yeah, that's possible. I mean, it would offer up a fresh title program between Becky and Rhea at some point.
Yeah.
Which would be cool to see. So that would make a lot of sense. That absolutely would.
Yeah, absolutely. If they're going to give Rhea the same treatment they gave sort of Bianca, where she beats a lot of high profile, more established names, and Becky could be number 1 on that list.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Number 2, speaking of Becky Lynch, Seth Rollins. Of course, they're married, as you know.
Yes, they are. So yeah, if one of them changed brands, they're both going to change brands. Mm-hmm. Seth was on SmackDown for a year, I think a couple years back. Again, it's a situation where if Cody's not going to face Roman this summer and again for the titles, Seth should be Roman's summer program. That should be the match for the Universal Championships, the Undisputed Universal Championships at SummerSlam.
Yeah,
we got a little taste of this the Rumble a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
where Seth is really playing the mind games.
Oh, that was good stuff too.
That was fantastic stuff. And it's like one of only 2 losses that Roman has on his record as head of the table. Mm-hmm. He lost to Xavier Woods by DQ, even though Heyman got that overturned. Also here, Seth won by DQ. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I feel like if you want to add some real dimension to Roman's character, because betrayal is a huge thing for Roman, a massive thing, and that all starts here with Seth Rollins when he betrayed him and broke up the Shield. So if Roman could finally beat Seth, something he's never been able to do, and kind of close that chapter, maybe find a way to move past that initial betrayal, and think, all right, days of being betrayed are behind me, only for Jay to eventually lead to him losing the titles. That could be some good stuff.
There could be some really good stuff there. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with this. Do you think there's speaking of Roman, is there any scenario in which you think the WWE might find it advantageous to switch him over to be a Raw superstar. He's sort of like whatever superstar he wants. I mean, I know officially he's SmackDown. Like we've said, he doesn't really hang out on Raw. Do you think they're going to address Roman Reigns in the draft? Like, should they, given that he's the champion on both brands? Are they going to do a thing where Heyman says the tribal chief is not exclusive to one brand? Like, they got to do that, right? Because he's a champion of both brands.
You know what's going to happen is SmackDown's get the first pick. They pick Roman. And
is that how that's how they split the titles? That's what they did with Brock 20 years ago.
Yeah.
He went to SmackDown.
SmackDown have the first pick, and they'll draft Roman, and then Raw will have the second one. They'll pick Cody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're probably right.
That's what my feeling is. But we'll see if that's how it plays out. Another good reason for Rollins to get off Raw is because I feel like he's gone through a lot of the feuds over there.
You know what I think the first couple ones are going to be? Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's going to be Roman to SmackDown first. Probably Bianca to Raw first for Raw. And then if they go back to SmackDown, I forget, do they do SmackDown, Raw, SmackDown? It
used to be Raw, SmackDown, Raw, because for every 2 picks SmackDown gets, Raw gets 3. That's how they've done it. Because they have the extra hour.
Okay. All right. So if Raw picks first, they'll probably just pick Bianca, right?
Yeah, probably.
The look on your face is like they probably shouldn't. You should go with Roman. But they're not going to. So Bianca probably go first, and then you do Roman for SmackDown, and then Raw does Cody.
Yeah.
And then SmackDown would do Rhea. Yeah. And then Raw would do I don't know who.
What they'll probably do is do a snake draft. They'll do SmackDown, Raw, SmackDown, Raw.
Oh, maybe. Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So it'll be Roman, Bianca, Cody.
Yeah.
And then Rhea.
Yeah. And then
I don't know who will Raw take then.
I don't know. Anyways, getting back to it. No, because the first 4 are kind of the most obvious ones,
Yeah.
So yeah, no, Seth Rollins, there's a lot of stuff he can do there on SmackDown. Yeah, it's been since when you said that he was on SmackDown, it was in 2021 that he was on SmackDown. And I'll be honest with you, I barely remember that. Was that during Thunderdome? It was probably during Thunderdome, wasn't it?
It would have been.
If it was 2021, it would have been Thunderdome.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, the first half of the year was Thunderdome, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
it was July when they went back out on the road.
So yeah, he was on Raw, and then in 2020, in October 2020,
got drafted to SmackDown.
He went over to SmackDown. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it would have been part of the Thunderdome area.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Anyways, moving on to number 1. Cody Rhodes.
You want Cody Rhodes to go to SmackDown?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Why?
Fresh matchups. He feels like more of a SmackDown guy. I don't know. It all depends. Honestly, some of it depends on what they're going to do with Roman. It's are they going to keep him in the same vicinity? Doesn't matter because Roman's kind of a dual brand guy. But Cody's been there on right. And also it depends on what they're going to do with the matchups. If Seth Rollins is going to leave, you don't want him in the same place as Cody Rhodes necessarily. But yeah, I don't know. You said earlier on, Cody versus Gunther is an intriguing matchup. There's a number of things I think you can do with Cody, but, if you want to look, Triple H said this is going to be a game-changing draft. Cody's like the top non-champion free agent, or available person.
Yeah.
He's going to switch brands. That's probably going to be a thing. Cause that's a big deal. Him or Seth are going to switch brands. I could see that.
Yeah. And a lot depends too on what they do with the titles. If they split titles, then Roman for sure I feel like is going to stay on SmackDown. Then Cody will stay on Raw, and especially if it's a WWE title, that is the Raw title.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Then Cody will win it at some point.
Yeah.
And whether they get back to him ever challenging Roman at all, probably not.
Mm-hmm.
Not while Roman's on SmackDown.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to feel weird, though. It's going to feel like less. I'm not going to say less an accomplishment. It's not going to feel as substantial if Cody doesn't beat Roman for those belts, though.
I feel like,
or the possibility is there, where seemingly his popularity was at its peak at WrestleMania, came up short, and then I don't know, like in July or something, like they have a tournament and the finals is Cody versus
Seth.
Yeah, Cody wins. You know, he gets the moment with the WWE title, and that's great, but he didn't beat Roman to get it. You know,
I feel like you're right, but as long as he makes it part of his character that he did what he set out to accomplish, he should be happy. He should be fine, but he didn't beat Roman, and that's going to stick with him. And then you use that to build his motivation going forward, because if he loses to anybody, he'll know that maybe he wasn't ready for Roman. And eventually, like, you know, he has a very long title reign, you know, where he beats people very easily, you know, people like Gunther. And eventually he gets the opportunity against Roman Reigns, and he ends up winning. And maybe that's not even for titles. Maybe that's post Cody and Roman Reigns titles. And then you can build that to a big thing. If you really maximize the potential of Cody Rhodes, then his eventual meeting with Roman Reigns can be away from titles. It could be the match that we never got. It could be the last thing that Cody Rhodes never did was Roman Reigns. And that it's just like Rock Austin. Rock could never beat Austin until 19, until Austin's last real match.
Yeah,
that could be the thing. Like, he could win everything, but it's not enough for him. That'd be an interesting story, I think.
That could be if they went that route. Yeah, that could make the title win feel important, but the quest to still beat Roman, still be on the table and still be something meaningful that he needs to get done before he calls it a career.
Because as long as you dress it up, as long as you have all the pageantry and you have it at Madison Square Garden, him beating Seth Rollins for the title or him beating somebody else for the title is still a pretty big deal. And no, it's nowhere close to what could have happened at WrestleMania. I agree with that. But I think it'll still make people happy to make him happy. But if you give him that little chip on his shoulder, like, I didn't do this though, then you can get a lot of mileage out of that, I think.
Yeah, you could.
If they do it right.
That's true.
Which maybe they won't. So anyways, that's going to do it for this episode of Count Out. Let us know who you think needs to change brands in the draft. Oh, one of my honorable mentions, I mentioned this on the show the other day, and that's Dominic Mysterio being drafted out of Judgment Day. I think that could be really fucking cool, and it'd be super ballsy. And then what if he just decides to show up on the other brand anyways to hang out with Judgment Day? And that's always a problem for Pierce because he starts getting involved in matches. If Dominic becomes like the real wild card of like the WWE, I think that would be perfectly in line with where his trajectory is headed. I think you could do a lot of fun stuff with that.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's going to do it for the show. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it. Till next time, we'll talk to you later.
Goodbye.